From the 17th century, see if you can guess it. What about this one? Nice, from the 18th century. How about this from the 19th century? All right, from the 20th century then. Dig down deep. You got it? So how do we know, right? We use multiple literacies to manage uncertainty like this. We connected new sounds together with old sounds, anticipated the changes, and responded. We connected melodies with words, song titles, maybe even memories, maybe people, maybe places. Illiteracy for me is using available tools in an organized way to build up shared meaning, knowledge, or experience. Knowing what goes with what, putting things together in ways that make sense. Rooted in the idea of letters coming together to make written language, literacy really refers to grafting things together with purpose. Things from any system. It's not something that we just possess in our minds. Literacy is active. It's something we do to our world. Literacy lets us put it in order, even change it. We rework and adapt what's available to say new things, right? Think of your cat pictures. In new times and places, in new situations. The labor and the tools we use to read our world change how we see it. If we apply this logic to digital tools, to the social networks they support, we can understand what people mean when they say that our world is rapidly changing forever. It's changing because we're reading it, seeing it, hearing it, feeling it, dancing it in new ways. We're putting together our very lives, not to mention our livelihoods, in near constant dependence on digital tools and the new social networks that we're all experiencing. So what happens to this search for meaning, for roots? I am standing here with a banjo after all. As we become part of this revolution. As a high school teacher, my students were actively searching for their place in the world. Many expressed a feeling of rootlessness. I'm from nowhere. I grew up in suburbia. I grew up on Halo. How could I encourage and support their search for rootedness? Well, I learned as I went. We used all the English class stuff to the full, reading, talking, and writing about all sorts of things. But along the way, we baked hundreds of loaves of bread, pulled shots of espresso, planted vegetable seeds, and made tons of music together. I knew starting out there was something intensely intimate about making food and knowing how, putting together the ingredients that had sustained civilization. And I learned that music more or less worked the same way, that shared literacy was foundational to learning of all kinds, that music often created common ground in which we could root ourselves. From the moment I could talk, I was ordered to listen. Now there's a way, and I know that I have to go away. You can imagine how high school teenager might reach out and find something there to root himself in. There are plenty of reasons to ask whether and how digital and online worlds can help us sustain non-virtual communities. Constant connectedness raises concerns about losing track of fundamentally important pieces of our lives, separating us from our roots. But the stories, images, sounds, and guiding perspectives with which people graft themselves onto history and history onto themselves are becoming increasingly available to everyone in some really, really interesting ways. Rootedness is built in to the very process of communicating. Words, sounds, types of music call back to previous uses. We move music into new contexts from old contexts, and the music grabs new meaning along the way, drags old meaning with it, produces new fruit. And rootedness happens to us in the process. When musicologists like Ralph Renzler traveled to the Southeast in the 1960s, they didn't record songs that were brand new. Froggy Went A-Courtin' had been around for 400 years. They recorded songs that had been grafted together with new places, new situations, new problems, put to new uses. Selling crawfish 2 for a dime. Nobody's crowfish eats like mine. This morning so soon. Wake up, darling, don't sleep so late. The crawfish man done passed our gate. This morning so soon. And alongside these new uses were old ones. Songs meant continuity in the midst of change. Wedding tunes. Step we gaily, on we go, heel for heel and toe for toe. Arm in arm and on we go, all for Mary's wedding. Dirges, story songs, and of course dance music. The ones using the technology, the Ralph Renzlers out there, to create the recordings were learning the music at the same time. That's why they'd come. They were making roots, and making roots available to a wider audience so others could join in the fun. Now, if any moment in American history spotlights this process of grafting old and new together to build meaningful roots, it was the American Civil Rights Movement. It called attention to the tradition going back to slavery and before of interweaving faith, hope, suffering, struggle in standard or acceptable musical forms. The Exodus and the journey to freedom narratives from the Bible are the most famous. But it wasn't the music alone. It was the act of grafting old and new together. The act of grafting one story onto another. That literate action of putting old and new together has always happened everywhere. But all of a sudden its importance became really clear and really important. Odetta, the voice of the Civil Rights Movement, worked from an existing folk version of I'm on my way to Canaan's land. I'm on my way to Canaan's land. But she emphasized the collective struggle at the heart of that movement and said, I asked my brother to go with me. I asked my brother to go with me. I asked my brother to go with me. Lord, I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. The process didn't end when that song became an anthem, when it went platinum in the Civil Rights Movement. No, Doc Watson's version drew on a very different tradition that served very different purposes, even though it was happening right along the same time. In bluegrass gospel, which was much more interested in personal salvation in heaven rather than struggle for justice on earth, they'd sing, if my brother don't go, it don't hinder me. If my brother don't go, don't hinder me. And Doc appreciated the humor in that and even inserted Christian celebrities' names into the song to bring out the humor. If Dolly don't go, don't hinder me. Of course, he's talking about Dolly Parton. I'm on my way. Praise the Lord. I'm on my way. Now, y'all, I don't know these people in the flesh. I got to know them virtually. But I do know they didn't always do musically what they are remembered for today. Odetta grew up in Los Angeles, where she studied opera and musical theater. Doc Watson, when he was discovered, he didn't even own an acoustic guitar. Ralph Renslow, the Yankee musicologist, convinced him to get with the program and make the music that urban America was crazy for. Mountain music. Play what we want up in New York City. We want to hear that mountain blues. Play us that. I wish I was a mole in the ground. I wish I was a mole in the ground. I was a mole in the ground. I'd root that mountain down. Lord, wish I was a mole in the ground. Kind of hard to imagine that going over in New York City. But they were silly with it. But y'all, the process continues. Last month I heard John McCutcheon bend the idea of being a mole in the ground back toward the folk tradition. Instead of a song of resignation, I would rather be a mole in the ground than live with that woman. John McCutcheon sings, I wish I was a mole in the ground, because then I could stick it to the man. I'd root that mountain down. The words didn't change. The old was grafted into a new context and brought on new meaning. Far from just having roots, or the music being our roots, we make our roots by immersing ourselves intentionally in communities. Today there are new communities developing everywhere, attuned to the meaning-making processes at the heart of musical experience. Online worlds are constantly unfolding new opportunities to support our search. You know, there are fragments of song lyrics that I look for every year. Every once in a while, the complete song will appear as a gift from someone who was passing by and offered me a lift. And my mom said, referring to this collective, she said, someone else has done the work that you were thinking you could never do. It's like we are each other's angels. We meet when it is time. We keep each other going and show each other signs. Rooting always requires help. But access today to new literacies is fundamentally shaping that work. My opportunities to make new connections in this nerve center of music are only limited by my other obligations, which I should mention. I have a wife and 3 children. But if it weren't for that, I'd play Sally Goodman all day if I could, if the Lord and my family wouldn't take it very good. So I fiddle when I can and I work when I should. Thank God I'm a country boy. The roots I wanted most to graft my story onto had been out of reach my whole life. Some of you may know the feeling. Obliterated on purpose. Literally submerged. Family farms on both sides were flooded by lakes built in the 1920s and the 1930s to bring light to Appalachia's darkness. Wheeler Lake in northeast Alabama and Lake Burton in North Georgia. Big New Deal era projects. All what have they done to the old home place? Why did they tear it down? But a book of poetry took me under those waters a few years ago. There I read of the displacement of families during dam projects in western Kentucky. The passages loaned me a way of thinking and feeling. I was in Kentucky, experiencing the suffering there, but I was also in northeast Alabama and northeast Georgia. And for the first time I could see the painted blazes on the barns. 587. The company men wouldn't let them paint on somebody's house So there it was in the corn crib where the new water line would be, 587. All the trees below that line had to go. Couldn't mess up anybody's boats, could we? The vivid reminiscences I read helped me author reminiscences of my own. Some of the work of grafting old to new had already been done. The rest I could do. I had Moses, I had the Red Sea, the Promised Land, the Muscle Shoals Dam, and now I could see people looking for meaning in it all. I grafted the Western Kentucky landscape onto my Georgia-Alabama history to make a homecoming. Moses called God's children out of Pharaoh's hand, and Jehovah piled up water, leaving bone-dry land. It took the bottom of the Red Sea for a pathway then. Can we find a path back home like that again? Oh, sun, keep on shining, burn on after midnight through the morning, shine on till the ground's dry and dusty, till I see the home I lost to Lake Kentucky. The work had already been done. That work was part of other people's quests for roots. We always share in and borrow from each other's root making. With new ways of communicating, creative products and directions are unlimited, and tools for grafting are always becoming more refined, accessible, or available. Now let's go back. Tape recordings, solid-state amplifiers, sheet music, automobiles, and radio were the technological necessities that allowed Odetta and Doc Watson and other pillars of American music to put down roots and to set me up to fashion my own. These heroes of mine were professional musicians with recording contracts, but they had to have them. They had to make a living with their music because it took so much time to learn it, make it, and share it. A parent of two of my former students is right now diving into roots music and learning to play the fiddle in 5-minute YouTube-assisted increments for free while shaving. What happens to our efforts to graft ourselves into our communities, into our history, when guidance and access become so amazingly available? Y'all, over 15 years of video is being watched on YouTube every minute. I realize not all of that is banjo related. And it seems strange to say it, but with so much music being resurrected, created, recorded, and shared, I can say with absolute certainty that this is the place where I am most wanted, where everything I am comes from. I brought you here so that you might notice the light in my eyes like the afternoon sun. Music is a kind of nerve center of authenticity and intimacy that can connect to virtually every aspect of life. It's one of the fundamental literate activities, along with play and sharing food, that reaches across knowledge compartments to root us in a way of being human. Working with music provided context in my old classrooms for teaching about imagery, economics, prejudice, for sparking thoughts about first love and dying well. As the infrastructure for creating, remixing, sharing, experiencing music expands, infinitely many new opportunities are emerging for people to understand and connect with each other, with their history, with the earth. These changes in the way we communicate and create knowledge are stimulating and sustaining root growth in ways that I'm just thrilled to imagine. And I appreciate being here.